Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours for the last week in April. For these end of the month sessions, we pick a specific topic and we get our panel to do some show and tell as well as answering your questions. And this time we're going to talk about Salesforce and email. And we're lucky to have a panel of experts on this, though it is a very big topic. So I think we'll only be covering certain aspects of it. Anyway, two of our panel, Jesse and Chris, are joining Office Hours for the first time. So welcome. Welcome to them. Welcome to all of you on the call, whether this is your first time or you're a frequent flyer with us. Just to give you an idea of our agenda for this session, we're going to start by talking about some of the features of emailing within Salesforce for doing mass email and also some automation around notifications. We're going to talk a little bit about about integrations with broadcast email tools. And we're going to look a little bit at how you can synchronize Salesforce with an external email tool, so doing email to Salesforce or whatever. So if you have questions as we're talking, please feel free to post them in chat. And thank you, Meda, for the question that seems to have got us started. Anyway, feel free to post these in chat and we'll pause as we go along for the answers. Since there are a lot of us on the call, we'd be grateful if you could mute your mic throughout the session, unless you're presenting or we ask you to speak, of course. So thank you. Let's see. Salesforce isn't really an emailing platform, is it? I mean, there are some limitations, but nevertheless, there is some emailing functionality within Salesforce, and that can be quite useful for certain kinds of notification and for automating responses to certain things. Panel, what of the email features that are within Salesforce, what do you use, and where would you point people if they're kind of coming to Salesforce to start off? What should they look at?
Well, I could talk, just a bit about my instance. We have about 400 users and are a fairly well-established instance. But and we have apps for kind of the external facing emails that hit people outside Ashoka. And I would say we primarily use Salesforce email tools for internal notifications, which we do also with Chatter now that you can do that with Process Builder and whatnot. But so mostly for the Salesforce email functionality we use for internal notifications, and then we use apps to email our contacts and leads and newsletter subscribers and whatnot. And so that's kind of our typical use case.
I'd say the other thing some of our clients have done in the past is transactional kinds of emails that get fired out of Salesforce as well. Reminders of expiration dates and that kind of thing. That's really based on data. And I think over time we've trended towards using external apps for most of those as well now, but we've done a lot of that in the past.
This is Jessie. Can you hear me?
Can hear you now, Jessie, yes.
Okay, great. So I have used a lot of workflow based emails for workflow and process builder for sending out emails at different points in a process of an application. So when we've received this was at a university, looking at what pieces of paper we needed from a student when we receive them, sending out an automated email. You just have to be really careful when setting up workflows that fire automatically, especially if you're still importing old data.
I think you might have a demo for us, Jessie, to show us a little bit about that automation. And
I do.
Great. And also there's some, in Chris Robinson's question in the middle, he says, I've been told that there is a 1,000 limit of emails sent per day from Salesforce. Is that still correct?
It is 5,000 now from mass email. When I was searching for it this morning, that's what I saw.
And yeah, even Apex is up to 5,000. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. But that doesn't include workflow emails. Workflow emails have a huge limit. I can't remember what they are, but it's pretty high. So it's basically the mass email contacts link that you'll find below your contacts tab, which we could talk about the pros and cons of sending emails from Salesforce. That might be a good discussion item, but that has a limit of 250 contacts per send and 5,000 per day across the org, regardless of how many users you have. And that also includes emails sent via Apex, which is not something you're probably doing unless you're doing some complex stuff. But workflow email limits, I swear, are like 2 million per org, like max, and I think it's 1,000 per standard license. So if you have the standard power of 10, you've got 10,000 a day, up to 2 million per org. But Salesforce is really not a mass email platform. It doesn't provide opt-out. It doesn't provide a ton of tracking. You can't do like the best templates in the world, although you can get kind of crazy with Visualforce. But the native template builder isn't exactly like cutting edge. So it's great for like just your like the transactional kind of communications or internal communications, and you can get pretty fancy with it. But you'll find, especially around the opt-out stuff, you can build your own functionality for that. But you might find yourself moving towards an app if you're trying to use it for mass emails. And did that cover the limit stuff? We can put a link. I can post the link. It covers it, but.
That would be great. Thanks, Gaurav. And yeah, I think it's really it's good news that it's gone up to 5,000. It just gives you a little more, and that is per instance, Chris, not per license. As Gaurav said, there's a slight difference to it. Jessie, I know this is a formal looking presentation because I persuaded Jessie after she gave it to the user group last week to come and join us on office hours. So don't be put off by the fact she's done all these fancy slides. They were for another purpose.
I'm slightly put off. Jessie's raising the bar here.
I've made 3 slides, so don't.
Well, there you
they're
go.
Not, yeah, made them quickly. So thank you. I just wanted to put a shout out to the Cedar River Clinics, where I'm a board chair. That is my current nonprofit work with the Feminist Women's Health Clinic here in Western Washington. So let's see, advancing my slides. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the mass email option and talk you through a little bit how to do it. And then we can go back into those considerations and limitations, how it compares to other tools. So when creating, hold on, got a lot of screens here. Okay, these are ponies, but irrelevant. Okay, so, whoops. Okay, so when you are starting, the first thing you need to do for any email program you're using is create your template. And you get there from setup. And I always just search by typing it in, but making sure I don't hit enter and then going to email templates. So in the demo I wanted to talk about today, my example is a birthday party business. And in this situation, it's we're going to respond with an email to leads that come in through our website. So I have merged in some fields here from leads where people have requested on my website that they are interested in having ponies for someone's birthday, and I have the current rate here. And so these are all the things I've merged into this email that I'm going to send out through mass email. So to get to, let me go back to my slides here. So I've set up my email template, and that was just a text-only template, really simple, and you can get a lot fancier with them. Next, to send out our email, we're going to go to contacts and leads, or leads, depending on which group we want to send this out to. So I'm going to look at leads that have come in from my website. When I go to the leads page, I go to mass email leads. And you can do the same thing with the contacts. Here you need to create a list view. And your list view is just finding which leads you want to send this email out to. So I'm going to use all of my leads. And I click go. And then from here, I can limit it down to specifically which people I want to send them out to. So I'm just going to do a few right now. I would, in my demo, situation, I would have a list for all the people who recently been interested in the ponies option for the birthday party business example. And then on the next step, I'm going to pick out which template I have. We can preview it again here. So really simple, easy screens to walk through. Because I'm in a sandbox, I can only send out 3 more emails today. But if you're in your regular example or regular production environment, you can send out as many as you want, up to 5,000. Sorry, not as many as you want. All right, great. So then these are some important things here. You can BCC me on one message and then store an activity for each message. So I'll show you what that looks like. And it's a great feature. And then delivery options, also cool. You can send now or you can schedule it. So I'm going to go ahead and send the email through my mass email wizard. And oops, where did this go? Hold on. The email is over here on my other screen. Whoa. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so this is the email that I got, and has all of the nice fields merged in. One thing is it shows in the mass email that it comes from me as I was the logged in user in my sandbox. However, you get this really long string here that it's actually from Salesforce. But otherwise, it looks really simple in this text format. And notice that there's nothing in here about opting out or unsubscribing. So this doesn't really follow any of the spam laws that we're supposed to be following. So let's get, let me see. Going back to my slides here.
I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a while, about the advantages of using some other tool. Keep going. Sorry,
right.
Keep going, Jessie.
Oh, no problem. So yeah, so when you're looking at this tool, some of the pros, I think, depending on the size of your organization, 5,000 emails per day, no extra cost. You can schedule in advance. You have the option to create a task record. Let me go back and show you what that looks like on my record here. So when I go to this lead here, I have this activity history with the that shows that they got this response here. However, there's no content regarding what was in the email and how this is set up here. So if you wanted to keep a record of the email, you need to use another tool to do that. Oops, going back. Okay. You can get a little fancier with HTML, text, and I believe you can use Visual Force options here. However, as I said, the task doesn't include email content, and you have a limited reporting options for open rates. I believe only the person who was logged in and sent the email can open a report to show their email that went out and what the open rates are. So many people prefer other tools for that information. And these emails aren't automated. So in the example I had of birthday party lead response, you probably want to use a different tool to send it out right away so that you weren't waiting to send out all of these emails en masse. So those are the main things for mass email. I've never actually used the tool for an organization. We've already gone ahead and used MailChimp or another tool that does have some fancier options. But for cost savings, I think it can't be beat.
So let's dig into, thank you. Let's dig into a few questions that have come that are sort of related to this. There are people asking about sending out mass emails to quite specific lists. Somebody, Chris's question about reminders for reminder emails for people who've registered for events, and Kai's question, which is similar, emailing all of their students in a particular class with reminders and notices related to that class. So, I mean, you said you were at a university, Jessie. Did you have certain types of? Would you send out reminders and things like that through Salesforce email?
We had another managed package on top of our standard Salesforce specifically for universities. So I use that tool for sending out emails. Is there a way, I'm thinking, in campaigns for sending mass emails? Is that an option here, or I don't remember?
There actually isn't. I just looked up, there's this idea which gets a lot of snarky comments because it's like 10 years old now, but for mass email all campaign members from the campaign view. So if you want to see people get snarky, that's kind of prime time. And it's not on their roadmap because they've got Marketing Cloud, they've got Pardot, and they're really not a mass email tool. So I think I was actually going to check this. I think you could actually create a workflow rule on campaign member that would potentially email that person, which would be a very dangerous thing to do. Because but you could have like a checkbox on your campaign or something that says engage the spam cannon, and then when you add campaign members via a report to that campaign, all of a sudden you send thousands of emails. So it would be dangerous, but I believe you can. I was actually going to check if campaign, because I know I've got it's possible. No, yeah, you can create workflow rules on campaign members, so you could technically kind of rig up a where if campaign member status equals notify, that it would send a notification. There would be that seems to be possible. I have not done that myself, but it does seem to be possible.
And I think it is one of the options for creating a list view, isn't it? For if you're creating a list view of contacts or leads, you can use the members of a campaign. So that's also one way of doing it. Yeah. I think some of this automation though comes in more.
There you go.
Yeah. I think some of this automation comes in more useful though, doesn't it? When it's not mass emailing. When you have to acknowledge specific things. I mean, if any of you, for example, are using the Volunteers for Salesforce app, that has a whole load of neat little rules built in for reminders for upcoming shifts and that kind of thing. So I think for just quite small groups, sending email based on workflow or process builder can work quite well, can't it?
Absolutely. Jessie, one thing, in the list of fields, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can actually even filter on campaign member status in this type of thing.
Oh, fantastic.
And you can, so that's, and you can even add it to the filter fields. It's just the very last one, so you sometimes miss it. So it is cool. You just couldn't get, if you have contacts and leads in the same campaign, you would have to hit them separately. But it is pretty cool. I mean, it does let you do stuff, and if you really wanted to, you could use form assembly or visual workflow or something to build something where people could kind of opt out, and you could manage it that way. But it is pretty cool what you can do and how you can maintain, especially like you said, the transactional stuff or the small mass emails like the class or like what Volunteers for Salesforce does. They've built some cool stuff that lets you kind of do some nice emailing based on shifts and schedules and stuff. I was working on a question about that a few months ago.
Great. I think since the conversation has been kind of drifting that way, I think we might bring Chris in now and talk a little bit about some of these other options. I mean, when you need to take care of spam and things like that. But we'll keep an eye on the time, and we can come back to you, Jesse, maybe to look at. I like your notifications that you do with automation. But let's move on for now, and we'll come back to it. So,
Okay.
Chris, we've sort of started to touch on why you might want to use a mass emailing tool instead of just relying on what's in Salesforce. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for us? And would you like me
Sure.
to make you the presenter?
I'm not sure about that yet. I'm
Okay,
clicking the little
just
button
talk
to
for now.
download the extension. But yes, I don't have slides. And I thought, as Caroline said, this is a huge world of apps and capabilities and stuff that we're talking about, and way too much to try to present on. So I thought I'd do this in a very quick overview, and then leave more space for questions and maybe demoing specific stuff. But as we've kind of touched on at this point, there's a lot of reasons to bring in an outside tool to do your email. The primary one right away is that none of this stuff, Salesforce, built-in Salesforce is not interested in being a marketing tool for email. They don't expect you to use it that way, and so none of this stuff is compliant with any kind of opt-outs, any kind of spam tracking, anything like that at all, unless you try to build something for that. And that's a huge reason right there to engage an outside tool. But there's a lot of other ones, like the email building. As Jesse said, you can certainly get fancy with templates in Salesforce, but they're not easy to wield, and they're not easy for staff that's not technical to use and modify. So the good email tools out there provide you with a template builder and content builders that you don't need to be particularly technical to use. Generally better tracking click-through rates and open rates, and just generally much better analytics on how people are interacting with your emails, heat maps of where they're clicking, and all kinds of nifty stuff like that. None of that stuff is available in Salesforce. And again, for even just creating lists and targeting people and stuff like that, we've seen that is possible in Salesforce, but I think in general, the better integrated options provide easier ways for again, non-technical users to do that. In most of our clients, there's a Salesforce person who helps set up this integration, but in most cases, they're not the person actually launching the emails. And so having a tool that is easy to train other staffers to wield is important. There are lots of options for integrated email tools. I'm kind of obsessed with them, but I get obsessed with one and I think it's the best, and then I find all the problems with it, and then I get obsessed with another one and move on to that. And what I've eventually realized is that none of these things are perfect, and it's all about trade-offs, and different platforms have different strengths in different areas. So it really depends a lot on what you need. But a few things to look for when you're evaluating options is the email building interface itself. There's a really big variation between platforms, where you have stuff like MailChimp and Campaign Monitor maybe on one side, and where they just really have invested a lot in a tool that makes it really, really easy to build really nice emails without any technical training on the high end there. The integrations are really hard. So all these things we're talking about are outside software platforms that are integrating with your Salesforce data and allowing you to send emails. And as you dig into complex use cases, there's just a ton of pitfalls and dragons and traps in building an integration like that. Besides the normal limitations of building something with Salesforce, and having to think about governor limits and all kinds of stuff like that, and all the different ecosystems of apps people have installed. There's also data and huge variations in the way people maintain data and how they track things and stuff like that has to be worked around. So there are a lot of pitfalls there. So looking for something where the the sync between the two platforms is reliable and consistent and transparent and configurable is really important. And to really think about how you want to target emails in Salesforce, we have clients that really do everything through email campaigns. I mean, through Salesforce campaigns, and do a lot of targeting based on, events and stuff like that. And we have clients that don't ever use that and target based on, membership status, or target based on location or other things. And depending on what kind of list you want to be able to cut, different tools are stronger in different areas. Let's see. I hate to talk too much generalities.
But is it generally true that the way that these integrations tend to work is that you would identify who's going to be on your list with maybe a Salesforce report, and then you push that list through? Is that the general pattern?
That is a pattern. I think that the two patterns are that one, and that's sort of the Marketing Cloud pattern, where you can email directly to, or it feels directly to, a report or a campaign in Salesforce through Marketing Cloud, which I think is one of the strengths of Marketing Cloud. But the other pattern is sort of a sync, where you define some rules about who is on a list in your email platform. So this is true for MailChimp and Campaign Monitor. You define rules, and those people get synced to a specific list or segment or something like that in the tool, and then you do your sending and your targeting from the tool side. So I think those are kind of the two. Well, and the other pattern, I think, is something like Soapbox Mailer, where you are sending directly, that the email campaigns are Salesforce campaigns. There's no distinction. And so when you want to target an email, you build your campaign, you add people to the campaign as you want, and you send directly through that. So I think those are probably the three sort of main patterns that we see there.
And then I think in that helps with the deciding who's on your list. And then I think where these tools tend to vary a lot is in kind of how much information comes back to Salesforce, isn't it? And that's, I think, perhaps where you were saying that there can be pitfalls. Do you want to talk? Could you talk a little bit, anybody, about what's important to capture in Salesforce, and what do you need to look for in kind of the information that's being written back?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think most of my clients start out feeling, and my initial tendency is the more data the better, right? And suck it all back in, and I want to be able to, analyze every angle and this and that. And I think we often find that a lot of that data doesn't get used. So the big issue here is with individual email results, right? So when you send out an email to 1,000 people, if you want to track 1,000, the responses of each of those people in Salesforce, so you could see which contacts clicked, who opened, who clicked the spam button, whatever, then your tool is creating a record for each one of those people for each email that they get, at least. And in some cases, they're creating one for clicks and one for opens and one for whatever separately. So there's a data storage issue that comes up there. And some tools give you ways to manage that automatically. Like Campaign Monitor does that. You can say, I only want to keep 3 months worth of individual email results. And some you have to go in there and clean those out yourself. But I think for most of our clients, they find that having individual email results is great for a very brief period of time. So maybe for targeting follow-up emails for a single campaign, but that they're not super useful to have in perpetuity. And that's separate from, you can have data about the overall email send, like your stats on your open rate and your click-through rate. That stuff you can keep forever. So you can look at that over time, but the individual email results, you have to prune pretty aggressively.
And probably the most important thing you need to capture is actually about opt-outs and things, isn't it? And that's people who unsubscribe from your list, and that's
Yep, that is definitely baseline. The other thing we do is a lot of these things do capture like spam reporting, so not just opting out, but people that, like, say in Gmail or another web platform, click the spam button, and that's really important to keep an eye on. And so we usually set up a report in Salesforce of those and have whoever's in charge of that subscribe to the report so that they never miss those. If there's ever more than a few entries on that report in the last week, that they get an email so they can pay attention to that, because deliverability is really important, and it's become I think a bigger challenge to manage as all these tools have gotten smarter in the last years.
Of the panel, I mean, is anyone? Do you? I know that Chris has decided Campaign Monitor is definitely your favorite of these integrations. Gaurav and Jesse, do you have experience with any other email tools that have worked particularly well for you, or anyone who wants to post into chat? Please.
This is Jesse. May I mention one that doesn't work very well, or is that?
Yeah, by all means, let's go for it.
Okay. All right. So vertical response is the worst that I've seen for building up all of that extra data storage. So having a record for each time there's a click and open, and not necessarily the most accuracy. So that has eaten up a lot of data that I've seen. We've just switched to using Act-On at my company, and so far we're really enjoying that. And with Act-On, we're doing more A/B testing. So that's something that I'm not sure if you've mentioned, Chris, if you have marketing people, that's something that you can do in additional tools where you're testing out subject lines and seeing what success rate you have with different templates and things like that.
I can say I've used a few of them. I've used vertical response many years ago. And one thing is they do have a hidden package that they will let you use, which doesn't install all that data, but you have to ask them for it specifically. Why it's not, at least they did. Why that's not a setting in their standard package, I don't know, because most other platforms I've used let you configure that and say try and control how much data you want to flood into Salesforce. I have heard that vertical response can actually let you email to fields other than the standard Salesforce email field. I've never tested that, but that's one thing that most platforms do not support. Or if they do, I've heard you can do it with Marketing Cloud with data extensions. Kalman, who was supposed to be here, is the only person I know who actually has done that, but it's complex. But if you have, like NPSP gives you multiple email fields on a contact, it's really only the preferred email, that standard Salesforce email field that anyone can hit. So that can be a challenge, that's not easy to address. But I've used vertical response. It was okay. It definitely did the data thing. We've used ExactTarget before the acquisition, which was very powerful. I loved how you could hit reports. It's the only one I know that does that, but Chris might know others that let you hit reports as well. I thought that was really cool in terms of how it lets you segment your data in powerful ways without building campaigns for every send. But their email builder was really bad back then. I think it's improved a lot since, and I'm going to check it out. We checked out Pardot very closely when we were switching off of ExactTarget, and I really liked their email builder and their tool overall. And we ended up going with a tool called .mailer, which is apparently very popular in the UK, but no one here had ever heard of it. But it's got an excellent email builder. It's got it was up there with Campaign Monitors in terms of ease of use. Their sync to Salesforce is pretty good. We've run into a few issues here and there. I feel like they're just not quite as robust as maybe I would like them to be, but it's a nice tool. It's definitely worth checking out. And hopefully you guys can hear me. Sorry, I'm a little quiet today. I didn't get enough sleep last night. But yeah, I think we're using .mailer now, and our teams really like it. We're a very decentralized organization, and ExactTarget, Marketing Cloud gave you a lot of cool command and control capabilities, but we basically wanted the inverse, and .mailer's kind of given us that. And yeah, we like Pardot too. I don't really understand. Maybe Chris, you can establish the B2B versus B2C thing in terms of like how Pardot is supposedly B2B and Marketing Cloud is B2C. But to me, they both send emails. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. I think the biggest distinction is that Pardot. I think that the really nifty stuff in Pardot isn't the email sender itself. It's they have cool stuff around like lead forms that you can put on your website, and stuff on their website that's tracking where people are clicking before they get to the lead form so that when you get the incoming lead, you could see, oh, they were interested in this page, and that information gets sucked into Pardot, and then you could use that to target emails. So I think that's the B2B part, is that it's really for like, you know, lead generation forms. It's got some really nifty tools. I have not used it for actually just sending email though, so I don't know how that stacks up.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jessie.
Well, we just did for marketing purposes, we looked at Pardot and ended up going with Acton and seeing a lot of similarity there for our emailing needs, and much lower cost. I can't speak specifically though to what we preferred about it, but we ended up going with that option. But that's with the for-profit, so I'm not sure what the nonprofit rate is for Pardot, if there is one.
Yeah, I'm not
But
sure
I think cost is often a consideration, isn't it, with these tools? I think the Salesforce options, even with the nonprofit discounts, I think can still be quite pricey. So yes, Constanta is asking about the free options, but I wondered, Chris, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot to do a quick little demo about Campaign Monitor, because I think it might be useful to get for everyone to see an idea of kind of some of the extra functionality you get from one of these tools.
Sure.
But there's a couple of interesting questions. So free options, people, if anyone would like to chat in, I think what some of their favorite free options are. There was also a question that Sandy's question, which perhaps people can think about, and I've now lost it, which was about aggregating results. So you had mentioned that email results tend to take up a lot of storage space, and if anyone has ideas about aggregating those results, we might come back to that question in a little while. Let's make you the presenter, Chris, because as I say, I think it might be useful for people to just see some of the features of Campaign Monitor, which might not be your choice, but to give you an idea of what you can do if you have a third-party tool like this.
Sure. So I'll do a whirlwind tour of a few things that I think are relevant. So. So I'm inside of Salesforce, so there's, Campaign Monitor, you can log in as a standalone website like this, but you can also access everything through Salesforce, and the integration here is really nice. But the gist is you establish lists, and you can create those from the Salesforce side or the Campaign Monitor side. But once those lists are created, they're syncing between the two. And you can add people to those lists in a variety of manual ways from a campaign, for example, or from a list view. But where the real action comes into play is with these automatic subscription rules. So you can have a rule, for example, add to full list, and it says that anytime a record is created or edited and the email is not blank and inactive is false and deceased is false, et cetera, whatever rules you want, automatically add that person to that email list. And you can similarly have rules that remove people if you check the inactive box or something like that, that people will get removed from the list automatically. So once you have your list and it's syncing and people are getting added and removed automatically, you can then map fields between Salesforce and Campaign Monitor. And you can map fields in either direction, but in most cases, we're mapping data from Salesforce to Campaign Monitor, and basically any field that's on the contact record, you can include. So you can see we have all kinds of stuff here, but I'll point this out for later. There's a member expiration date for these guys, and a member card URL, and a member ID, and all this stuff about their membership, their primary chapter, and all that kind of stuff is all mapped. So because of that, you can do a lot of nifty stuff, like create segments of your list. So let me, sorry. Let me go into here real quick. You can create segments of your list, and this is what I was saying before, where the model here is sort of you do your segmenting on the campaign monitor side once you're mapped, right? So, for example, here's a segment where the membership status is expired member, or you could do any combination of these that you can possibly imagine, obviously based on Salesforce data. Besides using that to segment, you can also merge those into emails directly. And so, for example,
That's how I feel. I'm not hungry at all, but I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
That's all right. Somebody who didn't mute themselves. Keep going, Chris.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So on automation, for example, there's a new member welcome series here. So when a new member record gets created, people get a series of emails, including, for example, the first one. And if we look at this really quickly, this email goes out, it merges in their first name, it merges in a URL to a membership card that they can download, it merges in information about their chapter, their expiration date, all that stuff is all included. And all this stuff just happens automatically as soon as people sign up. So just based on Salesforce data changing, people enter a segment and it launches this whole series of emails. We have a similar one for expiring members as well. So if you are I think it starts 60 days from your expiration date, you start getting a series of emails, and it's just based on the Salesforce data. Once it's set up, it runs itself. So these have been really nice, and you could do similar stuff like this in other platforms. I just find for Campaign Monitor, it's particularly easy to set up. And for staff, once I helped get it started for staff and my clients to edit these and change things and tweak the timing and all that stuff without much work. The other nifty thing, it's pretty new, is or fairly new for these guys, is you can do transactional emails out of here. I don't actually have one set up for these guys, but it's basically you create transactional emails on the Campaign Monitor side, and you then map your fields in Salesforce and use Process Builder to actually send those out. And you can base them on any object in Salesforce. So we're tinkering right now with for example, sending out an email. So we have people on automatic annual recurring donations. And so we are setting up one of these to give them a notification a week before the recurring fires again, to let them know that it's coming and give them a way to opt out of it if they don't want it. I guess the one other thing I'd mention. Oh, go ahead.
Well, Keith had just asked, can you filter these target emails to account primary contacts only?
To account primary contacts only. Let's see.
And BRC, thank you, is suggesting that you can, if you get a field on the contact, to indicate that they are the primary. Okay.
That's the issue, yeah. Basically, anything that's on the contact record. And that is actually, I think, a little bit on the downside of Campaign Monitor is if you do a lot of stuff that's targeted for like events where you want to send to campaigns, Campaign Monitor doesn't work quite as well for that. You basically have to create a new list for that event, and you can add people to the list from the campaign, but it's not as smooth as like Marketing Cloud or something, or Soapbox Mailer for sending directly to people in a campaign in Salesforce. One other thing I'll mention here is to Gaurav's point before about the non-standard email fields. Campaign Monitor just had an update that will allow you to create subscriber records for any object in Salesforce. So for these guys, that came in handy they have chapter records that are a custom object that have official chapter emails on there, and they've been managing that by hand previously, but now we can set up a list that is official chapter emails, and it will sync from that object, and you can choose any field on the object to map as the email field. So that's kind of nifty if that's important to you.
Very cool.
That's great. Thank you very much. and there's a bit of discussion going on here about pricing, and particularly people are asking about Pardot and Marketing Cloud. I believe they have always felt like they're things for organizations with large budgets, but I think it's definitely something to talk to your AE about. It's interesting. Your account executive, Salesforce account executive. I was in a conversation with one of them the other day, and I think that they are I think one of the things they're doing is sort of lowering the limits, the number of users, to try and make these tools a little more affordable. But I think they're quite a big investment in time and effort, aren't they, as well as just the price itself.
Yeah, I think that's true for all of this stuff, like the automation, the transactional, all that stuff. Just to keep in mind that it's cool, but it does, it takes a fair amount of time to get it set up, and not just the technical part, but the actual, being thoughtful about what the right thing to do is, and keeping track of your content and seeing what's working and staying on top of all that stuff. It's definitely a fair amount of work.
That's true, really, of any email tool, isn't it? Because you've definitely got to be careful about that you're not sending, that you're not spamming, and you're not sending a lot of ignored emails, because it's, you have to establish your credibility, don't you, as a reliable email
Yeah, I
sender.
think, as a public service announcement, like really emphasizing that I mentioned this a little before, but that the technology around filtering stuff out of people's inboxes for deliverability is just really leaps and bounds above where it was if you've been doing this for 10 or 15 years, right? Like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft, these guys are all gotten really smart about not putting things in people's inbox that they don't want to see. And there's no I feel like back in the old days, there used to be a bunch of tricks. Well, if you don't use the word free in your subject line, that helps, right? Or stuff like that. And that stuff doesn't work anymore. You actually just have to write engaging emails and respect people's preferences around email, and do just a good job at all that stuff, or you will find that your emails are not in people's inboxes.
Very true.
Because there have been a few questions about it, can we talk a little bit about getting emails into Salesforce? How do you capture the people that you want on your list? Are there ways that your organization does this, Chris, or that you recommend to clients? What's the best way to capture emails, get people on the
only
list?
The only one I know well is, I'm sorry, do you mean getting people onto your broadcast email list? Is that what you?
Or whatever, or capturing their
New
emails.
subscribers?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. I think almost all of our clients are using something like Form Assembly. Most of these tools come with some kind of sign-up functionality, but often there's some reason why it's not quite what we need. So usually we use something like Form Assembly, so we have more control over it, and embed those on the website and stuff like that.
And then, I mean, they're a little more primitive, but there are other ways that you can get people's emails into Salesforce. Gaurav, do you want to just speak briefly about email to Salesforce?
Yeah, I can talk about a number of things. I mean, in terms of getting emails into Salesforce, there's the trusty old web to lead form, which is well documented, but it basically lets you create a simple form that gives you the HTML that you can throw onto your website, and now they have reCAPTCHA for it as well to prevent spam. So that's a very easy way to create a lead, and only a lead. Web to case, you could probably get creative with and use that to create contacts, but I'm just guessing there. I haven't actually tried that. But Form Assembly or Visual Workflow you could also use for that to kind of create a simple form. But in terms of, there was a question earlier on in terms of actually getting the responses back into Salesforce. And then there's also email to Salesforce. So basically, there's when you're sending an email to a contact who is in Salesforce, say I've got Bill Gates in my instance, and I want to send Bill Gates an email and log that email to Salesforce. That's what email to Salesforce does, and it's a great tool, and it's something that if you're not aware of and using, you probably should. But the one, and I'll demo that in a sec, but that only gets the outbound email. The email from me to Bill Gates will get logged into Salesforce as if I had sent it from Salesforce. It lets you do it basically by BCCing a really long, complex email address that you can save as a contact in your system. And anyways, so email to Salesforce lets you get that outbound email in. But in terms of when Bill Gates writes back to me, that will never get into Salesforce without a tool. And Salesforce themselves actually, they have two things, but they're both paid. One is like Salesforce IQ or Salesforce Inbox. I don't know what it's going by now. That looks pretty cool. A friend of mine used it for a while and loved it when it was free on the trial, but it costs money now, so she's not using it. And then there's also, they just rolled out Einstein Activity Capture, which works with Gmail or Office 365 and will intelligently put all of the responses back, and I think even outbound and inbound responses, send and receive, and it'll connect it to contacts and events, and it does really cool stuff. But in terms of getting the response back, Salesforce to Outlook came up. So there's no automated way to get it back. There are Salesforce for Outlook and Salesforce for Gmail will let you click a button and basically log the response to the contact. But there's no automated way other than Einstein Activity Capture, which I'll post the links for that in a second. But yes, Caroline, if you want to, I can demo email to Salesforce in about 30 seconds, and then maybe show one other quick thing, if time allows. How do you have to make me presenter, or can I do that? There we go. Okay. So just email to Salesforce. If you don't, definitely take a look. And if you Google it, you'll find a lot of info. But if you go into My Settings under Email, sure enough, there's Email to Salesforce. And here is this address. And if you take that address and save it as like a contact in Outlook or Gmail called Salesforce, then all you have to do is BCC that contact, and Salesforce will automatically log that email to the matching record for whoever you're sending to, up to 50 people. So you can send an email to a bunch of folks, and it'll log it to them. One useful thing that you often want to do is to exclude your domains, because a lot of folks have contact records for like the staff at their org, and you probably don't want to log it to their staff contact records. You probably just want to log it to like Bill Gates's record and Bill Clinton's record, but not Bill Drayton, who's the CEO of Ashoka. And you can even assign it to open opportunities if you desire. So it's pretty cool, and getting people to use it takes a little bit of work, but you have to copy this address and create a contact in Outlook for it, so make it very easy to kind of remember that. So that's email to Salesforce in a nutshell. It's a great tool, and highly recommend using it. And if Salesforce can't match on an existing record, it sends the email to a place called My Unresolved Items, which you can find on your home page, but then it has a nice process for actually assigning them to existing records. It will log to multiple people. If you send it up to 50 people, it can create activities for all of them. I think if you have shared activities enabled, it might create one, and I'm not sure how it deals with, does it create 50 separate ones or one and shares it with the rest. But it will only work with the standard email field at present, though, which is a bummer. I was hoping it would work with all email fields. I'm going to show one or two other things like really quickly. It's kind of an internal email thing, but did you know you can replace your internal listservs with a chatter group, and you can even send attachments? The only thing you lose is the subject. The email subject never comes through, but the attachment, you can send multiple attachments. It's a really cool use case for like internal Salesforce emails. I think that's probably all. And then web to lead, like we mentioned, you can Google that very well. But there's a lot of information on setting it up, and it makes it pretty straightforward. You can decide what, create web to lead form, decide what fields you want on there, and then the reCAPTCHA thing's a little complex. I'm not going to dive into that. And you can tell them where to go when they're done. Thank you. And then if you click generate, I gotta turn that off because I'm not gonna deal with that right now. It gives you the HTML, and you can send that to your web person, or if you are the web person, you can just copy that, paste it on your site, and you're off and running. Anyone can submit that and create leads. Can I demo Salesforce to Outlook? I can, because I actually have it set up, but I use Outlook Web Access. So all my email is internal, so I'm not too concerned about what you're going to see. But here's a flow error. It's probably not going to find anybody. But Salesforce, I started using the web-based version. It's pretty cool. And what it basically lets you do, it's not always the fastest thing in the world, but it looks for any matching records in Salesforce. And then if it doesn't see anything, it's supposed to let you search. But I don't know how Howard Jones came up, but there we go. Now it's finally loaded. So I'm just going to search for myself since this is being recorded. And from there, if I could type, I could log the email to them. And in terms of the web one versus the other one, I work remotely a lot, and I work on Linux, so I only use Outlook Web. So I've started using the web one exclusively. I think they're basically equal in feature parity now. For a long time, the desktop one was better. And from here, this is my contact record, and with one click, I can actually. You see how often I actually do this. I can actually log the email to the contact, but I can't remember where they moved the button to do that. I thought it was this.
Gaurav, it's the little arrow with
this one. There it is. Thank you.
Yep.
And so now
could I speak real quick to the difference between the desktop and the browser? This is the only option for Mac. Using the browser-based version, which is actually called Lightning for Outlook, and which is confusing. And then I also find my Mac users, sometimes it just doesn't work. That little box you were looking for to click isn't there, and this is a known issue with Salesforce. So I also think the non-browser one, I can't think of the word, it can be challenging to set up. You might need an IT person to get involved. Okay.
Because I think you do have to be quite careful about how much you're syncing, don't you? And to think pretty carefully about what's coming into Salesforce and what isn't, and what's automated and what's manual, and which is true, I think, of really any of these syncing tools, because there are other options, aren't there?
I think Cirrus is faster. Salesforce for Outlook has come a long way in the last 2 years. It was really painful before, but it's still not quite where I'd like it to be. Like Caroline mentioned, it can do more. It can actually sync contacts and events, and I actually have that turned off because I feel like it's too much of a fire hose. I'm basically using it to be able to see contacts. And with the last release, you can actually customize this a lot, which you weren't able to do before, but you can actually customize the related lists. I think the fields, I think you can basically do a ton with customizing the interface for Salesforce for Outlook, and at least the web version, and I think it works in the desktop as well. So that's promising as well. That it is moving forward. I still feel like Cirrus is probably faster at this stage, but that it really could be where it needs to be within the next release or two.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. I realize that we could carry on talking about this for a whole nother hour, but I want to be very respectful of people's time. Thank you, BRC, whoever you are, for filling in and taking up Bill's question about non-supporter emails and that kind of thing. I will save the chat log, and we have been recording, so people can come back to that. Oh, hi, BRC. Was that you? Thank you very much indeed to our panel for giving us at least some starting points, some things to think about, and some places for more investigation. As I said at the beginning, this is a big topic, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface, but I hope that was helpful to everybody. So thank you very much. Office Hours will be back with a general Q&A session next week, so those of you who had data import questions, please come back and ask them for the team next week. And in the meantime, thank you again, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.